Well, the Epstein files came out, and sweet Fanny Adams happened about it. The pedos and the rapists and the groomers are still out there touching our children. By the way, trigger warning, graphic warning. Anyone out there who has suffered any kind of sexual harm, a warning to you. You could get triggered, so please, please take care of yourself. I'm not responsible for your triggers. I am mindful of them. Also, we're going to get into some subjects that might be offensive, like apparently the serial rapist and worse, Jeffrey Epstein, apparently dead, had a 2-inch odd-shaped penis. Now, you hear about these things, and then there's a psychology behind someone like that. We often find that men with ordinarily tiny penises who are in positions of power, who abuse that power in the worst ways, are really cruel and really violent and enjoy torture, such as my friend Kathy O'Brien, who escaped the White House and the Pentagon. She was one of her owners, as she calls him, had a micro penis, and he was extraordinarily evil and cruel to her, scarred her body, did terrible things. So, again, a warning, a graphic warning. We are going to go into a true victim's testimony, and I am so thrilled to have her. Welcome, Ebba P. Karlsson. How are you, my love?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
I,
so excited to be here with you.
oh, bless your heart. I did check with you going in the things that would be all right and safe because I want you to feel safe. I also told you, which there's a goosebumps again. I also did say to you that your courage in coming forward, your courage in sharing what we're about to share really does fill up women who are never ever going to come out, who are going to be too scared or too whatever, controlled to come out. So I really do applaud you, Ebba, immediately for your bravery, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to
Thank you
hand
so
it
much for
over.
your kindness.
Oh, my love. I'm going to hand this over to you, and you're going to start your testimony where you feel comfortable.
So I was 20 years old. I lived in Stockholm, Sweden, where I'm from. And I had a boyfriend. I worked actually at the body shop, the English hair and body company at that time. And we were out, outside downtown Stockholm in Park Kungsträdgården, and this guy approaches us. He is a French scout. And we were a group of models. So some were models, some were artists. My boyfriend was a dancer. And so kind of a artistic group of people. And he comes up to me, he's like, wow, you're beautiful. And do you work as a model? And I said, well, not really. I've done some work, but I'm open to it. And he said, I have this great opportunity for you to come to Monaco for a swim costume catalog. And it's in a couple of weeks. And if you're interested, just here's my number, here's my card. And he told me his name was David Goldberg or Daniel Goldberg. In my book that I wrote, I mentioned him as David because I couldn't remember whether it was Daniel or David. So, but I have my boyfriend's, I still in contact with him, and he assured me that it was Daniel. And so, anyway, I had his card. I didn't know really who he was. So I went to Stockholmsgruppen, who was the modeling agency that was well known at that time, and asked them if they knew him. And they said, yeah, he's an independent scout. So yeah, you should be fine. And so I left on one-way ticket to Nice, France, and took the bus to Monaco, step out of the bus. This was the time in 1990 we didn't have cell phones, we hardly had internet. So there was no other way than to find out about this man than to talk to people who knew him. Um, and so it was also the time of the glam magazines, the supermodels. We had Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, Naomi Campbell, and all these women were in this thick, glossy magazines. And because we didn't really see them, on TV, we had basically two stations in Sweden at that time. So, there was nothing like MTV was there, but that was, we didn't have that. That was just, if you had cable. So anyway, I am in Monaco and I'm waiting for him and he's not there. So I go to this phone booth and I call him and ask, wait, hello, I'm here. Are you coming? And he's like, what? Why are you here? Oh, and then he's irritated. And so he comes down he's there in Monaco and he comes down and he gets me. And I'm starting to get like anxious. Why is he so irritated? And so we go up to this high rise in Monaco, a building called, I think it was Millefiori, which is one of the earliest skyscrapers in Monaco. And so we go in there and meet this guy who has this swimsuit company. And he says, "Well, sorry, darling, we already did the job. It's you're too late." And I'm like, "Well, that's odd." But he said, "Don't worry, you can be my secretary." And we were laughing because I spoke a bit of French. And so I was just very disappointed. And Daniel said, "Well, don't worry, I'm going to get you another job." So for a few days, we stayed in Monaco, living at different places with friends of his. And then he said, "We're going to go to Cannes." And so we took the train to Cannes, or what I think was a village outside Cannes. I can't really remember. I just remember it was a smaller village, and I had to carry my suitcase up to this villa. And as we come to this villa, there's nobody home there. We start knocking, and he said, "Well, they're probably not here right now. They will come." But it was shut down completely. So we had to go behind the house, and he was looking, trying to open the doors. This was a beautiful villa overlooking the Mediterranean and had a pool. And so there's a pool shack or a pool house next to it. And so he says, "Well, it's all right. We can stay here." And I'm thinking maybe it's a guest house. But when he opens the door, I get this huge shock that it's a cement building and it's two small dirty mattresses on the floor with dirty sheets. And then I start freaking out. Like, am I going to sleep here with him? Nobody knows where I am. I don't have a cell phone. So I start get really anxious. And so for the last couple of days, he's been starting to pay really flirting with me, like really what we call grooming today. I didn't know that then. I thought he was just stupid, and he was at least 15 years older than I was, and ugly. I didn't like him. I thought he was disgusting, disgusting.
Mm.
So anyway, we are going to sleep in this, and that night he was all over me, and I couldn't resist him, and he raped me there. So after that, I was very, very, I felt very drained. I didn't have energy. I was sad, and I felt so guilty that I had been so stupid to go there, and basically didn't resist him because I could have punched him, but I was too scared. I was too scared to.
Yeah.
And so the next thing I remember is I want to go and tell him that I need to talk to my parents. I want to go down to this phone booth and call them. And I don't recall this, but my brother said that I called and I cried. I can't remember that. But apparently, Daniel was outside. So I didn't tell the full story, what had happened to me, because I also felt like I didn't want to scare my parents. I had put myself in this situation and was proud, like I'm going to take care of myself. So I didn't tell them everything. And the next thing is we walk back up to the pool shack, to the villa, and Daniel goes away to run some errands. And then he has left his passport on top of his bag. And I'm like, that doesn't look like French or European passport. So I opened it, and to my shock, I see that it's Arabic. It's got an Arabic name. And from my memory, I thought it was Moroccan because I can just remember some Mohammed name. And so I got really scared then. And so when he came back, I confronted him. It's like, "Why do you have a different passport? Who are you?" And then he got really angry with me and said that it's none of my business. And he was yelling and being aggressive. And so I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, I got to get out of here because I only have like 2 weeks it's my vacation. I have to go back home to Sweden soon. So I'm like, well, how am I going to get back home? You promised me a job. And so I said, well, I arranged it. We're going to Paris. So we traveled to Paris, and then he has arranged for me to meet a model agency called Champagne. And this guy who was gay, and he said I could stay with him. So I was like relieved to be not close to Daniel anymore. And this guy had, yeah, I just remember he had like porn magazines, gay porn magazines under his bed, and I was like, oh. But he was kind. He was kind to me. But he said that you're too short. I was only 170 centimeters, so I was not like most model needed to be at least 172, but this guy wanted 175. He wanted like the really tall, slim ones that like for the haute couture, catwalking and everything. And I just didn't fit that image. I was more like a fitness model. I was very like athletically built. And so then he said, I'm sorry, I cannot take you. But Daniel said, well, don't worry, because I arranged a casting for you at Elite. And I didn't know what Elite was. I had no idea. I was like, great. So I go by myself to Elite, and they had the biggest office, beautiful office in Paris. I found out that Elite was, like one of the biggest agencies in the world. And so I go there, open up, it's a big office, and all the bookers are sitting on the side calling, look at me up and down, like, who's that, And then Gerald Marie, who's the owner of Elite, comes and welcomes me into his office. And he opens the door, and I go into his office, and he's got a big office with a conference table. And on the wall, you have all the pictures of the models, their portfolios, their books. Um, And the first thing he does is to shut the blinds. So he closes the blinds to the outside and into the other side of the office where the bookers are. And I thought, that's so odd. Why would he do that in the middle of the day? And then he asked me to sit down, and for what feels like 2 hours, we're sitting there, and he's asking me all these questions, my dreams, aspirations, and since I speak French, he's like, wow, you would be perfect for this. And I was interested in acting. So he's like, you would be perfect for this movie role. And you're so beautiful. So I'm like, is this guy interested in me? What's going on here? It's like really, it's a little
Mm,
creepy. And then I remember he's saying, because I like medicine and I love, spiritual things, and I studied, and he said, oh, you think you're gonna be some kind of brain surgeon? Like, and I'm like, that's so weird to say. And after a while, he comes closer and closer, and he's like, well, you're so beautiful, I can make you so famous. And then he pulls out these photos with the supermodels, and he asked me, do you know who these are? And I said, yeah, they're familiar. And he says, what do you think they did to earn six figures? And as he said that, he pushes his hand into my private parts, and all what's happening to me is I just freeze. I am shocked. It was so violent. It just came out of nowhere that I just felt like he took my power away. He just like chopped my head off, basically. Um, and all I'm sitting in is this freezing energy, frozen.
mm,
And then I like pull away and like, yeah, let me think about this. And he said, "Yeah, great. Think about it, and then come to my casting in my apartment. We're having a party." Yeah, so I said, "Yes, okay, I'll think about it." And I just remember leaving that office and finding a bench outside, and I just sat down and cried because I just didn't know what to do. I
mm.
was so lost and panicked. I didn't know how to get out of there.
Oh, so
So
sad.
anyway, next thing I remember is that we were invited to Joel Marie's apartment, and Daniel and I went there together. And so there's a third man there, and I can't really remember his face, but I think it could have been Jean-Luc Brunel, or it could have been Claude Haddad, who was another trafficker. And because I mixed their name up, even when I wrote the book, I thought it was Jean-Claude. And it was so interesting because I must have heard the name Jean or Claude. And so I thought first that Gerard Marie was Jean-Claude. But after seeing his pictures, there was no doubt
Mm,
who he was. And so anyway, we're the three men there, and I'm the first woman, and he's drinking, and he said, "Here's champagne," and they're smoking. And so suddenly there are little girls coming out from the apartment, and they look a lot younger than me, and they didn't speak French, they didn't speak English. And from what I hear, it sounds like Slovak or Slovenian or Russian or something. And suddenly there are more and more, and more women are coming. So about 8 or 10. One spoke English, one was Canadian. And then they go, you have to, here's the paperwork, fill out this paperwork. Sorry, I'm just going to have a glass of water.
No way, absolutely fine. Bless your
And
heart.
so, so suddenly, they give us the paperwork you fill out to sign up with an agency with your height and your numbers and all that's personal information. And then they said, take off your clothes. And so and I'm asking, yeah, what do you mean? Like, do we take off our bra? Why do we need to take off our bra? And then he goes, Gerald Murray, he says, because we want to see your boobies are not saggy. And they all start laughing. Um, and so that's what we had to do. We had to take off our bra and walk in underwear like some livestock.
Mm,
uh, and as they were taking notes and judging and looking and laughing. And I felt if this is a model industry, this is hell, and I just need to get out.
mm, mm,
And it was after, that I don't remember so much. Besides that, I remember that Gerald said, "Oh, when I entered his apartment, he said, 'Oh, you just missed Sylvester Stallone.'" And I really liked Sylvester Stallone then because of the Rocky movies, and I thought he was, a cool actor. But then later I find out he was in porn. He was in porn. And anyway, so that was very disturbing, and we went out later that evening at Le Bain Douche, which was a very famous nightclub for models and celebrities. And yeah, I next I'm walking with Daniel on Champs-Élysées, and suddenly there's a friend that I know from Stockholm who works in one of the stores. And so I go up to him and say, hi, and how are you? And he's like, how are you? And I say, well, I'm not doing so good. I don't know how to get home. I don't have any money. And I started telling him. And then Daniel comes up, overhearing what I'm saying. And so my friends tells Daniel, seriously, like, you got to take care of Ebba. And as he says that, Daniel pulls me away screaming that I should stop telling lies. And he says, I could have you killed. You don't know who I know. I could fucking have you killed. I know the head of police of Paris.
God.
And then I'm like, is he joking? Is he serious? Who is this guy? And so after that, I have to get out. I have to come up with some way of getting out. So I called Joelle Marie. I said, yes, I'm going to sign up with I'm going to do the movie. I really like to work with you, but I need to go back home to take my driver's license and say, talk to my boyfriend and finish my job and everything. And so then he gives me a ticket to fly
Mm,
back with a
smart
promise that
girl.
I'm supposed to return.
Let's
And
can we pause for a moment, mate? And thank you so much. You're doing so well. And I know that you've been on, other broadcasts. And I just wanted to go back and ask a few questions, if that's okay, that are kind of coming to
absolutely,
mind. Um, so thank you for naming the monsters also. Now, the fact that there's some confusion around names, this is also an aspect of grooming that we hear. Like it's a big joke. It's a gang of men, the worst a man to call them men when there are such beautiful men in the world, it really isn't fitting to give them that title. Um, it is said,
very
and
true.
I've spoken to other victims, survivors of these abuses, that they used to pretend to be each other and swap the names about to confuse the girls. So I want to put that out there because there's always people that watch that go, oh, she can't even remember the name. They've got nothing better to do. They go straight to the negative. But this is actually a play in grooming, in abusing little girls, young women, and boys, of course. It happens to boys too. So bless you. It's just an awful, awful
Yeah, I
account.
mean, thank you for sharing that because, I was so um it was so confusing that when I gave my deposition in Paris in 2020 together with other survivors, and this was because we filed a complaint against rape, and that for or Gerald Marie against Gerald Marie for rape and for Daniel for human trafficking. I didn't know Daniel's real name.
Mm,
So I couldn't, when I wrote my book and I decided to share this story, I couldn't remember. So I had to really go deep within and start trying to pull these memories out. And that's when I did the research and I found out that Gerald Marie was the owner of Elite and that he had violated many other survivors. So this was in 2017, 18. And then I found out about Carrie Otis, who was raped, and she also wrote a book called Beauty Disrupted. And so we became friends. She wrote the blurb for my book. And so we decided to, after working together with Lisa Brinkworth, we decided we were the first to start Victorious Angels. And so there were a few of us to file the complaint for rape and human trafficking in 2020. And later we were totally 16 survivors that came forward back
wow.
then. And so, but had I known the true identity of Daniel, I would have, of course, given that, but I couldn't find him online.
Yeah.
I couldn't find his image. I couldn't find his real name.
Mm,
And so it wasn't until 2025 in December when this journalist, Anthony Mansui for La Société, approached my lawyer and said, I need to connect to Ebba and ask her if she recognizes this picture. And so he did. And so in
mm,
December last year, he sends me his Daniel's photo, and I'm shocked.
oh,
And I see that's him. And if you ever have been raped, their faces, you'll never forget their face. It's just so clear. And I wanted to vomit, and I sent this picture to my ex-boyfriend, who I still had, was a friend of mine, and he wanted to throw up. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. You find him."
mm,
And then Anthony tells me his name is Daniel Siad, and he is in the Epstein files about 2,000 times.
wow.
And I was so shocked.
Oh, bless your heart. Let's
Mm,
Can we go back to basically you've been entrapped. You've been spotted as a beautiful young 20-year-old girl. You've been a promise has been created. Let's go to Monaco. I mean, and Monaco's so tiny. The apartments are generally so tiny. Like I've been spent many years going back and forth there with friends I have
yeah,
out there, and so then you are shipped to Paris. I mean, I'm so sorry that you were violated in that dirty, filthy pig pen on that
yeah,
estate. But you see so many of these people, again, pretending they've got all these connections, but they're just the rats who are grooming and finding and just storing up these little souls, these little girls for abuse and, their own amusement. They have no care. You're nothing to them.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
totally. I lived in Monaco myself for 13 years because I was married to professional golfer Robert Karlsson. And so I saw that other side of it. We had dinner in a normal restaurant, and the couple next to us turns to my husband, or the man does, and he looks at my husband and says, "Don't you think prostitutes have become really expensive lately?"
oh my God.
Yeah, and
Oh
I
my
that was just one
God.
thing, and so we were constantly seeing prostitutes.
Oh,
It was very common,
well, this isn't a
and
very this isn't a very funny story, but I am going to jump in there because I had a dear friend, Harry Windsor, in Monaco and spent a lot of time traveling to visit there to spend time with him. And he was working one day, he managed a yacht. There's so many yachts there. It's the yacht center of the world and all of this. And sorry, the dog is trying to climb on me now. And stop it. And so I have some time to wait for Harry. So I go to the Four Seasons, the one overlooking the sea. And I'm walking around and I'm looking at all the glass cabinets and the jewels and then the staff start looking at me a bit peculiar. And the first feeling I thought was, do they think I'm a hooker? Because I don't even know about Monaco yet. As you know, and I'm walking around and I'm thinking, of course I don't look like a hooker. Like they're not. No, they were. Okay, the shame of it. So these four people come up to me, and this one man stepped forward and he said, "Excuse me, madam, we'd like you to leave." And I went, "Oh, why?" And they said, "We don't do that here."
No
Yeah,
way. No
I
freaking
was
way.
I was
Oh
so
my
ashamed.
God.
I was so ashamed. Anyway, I'm not the
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
person that will take that either, right? So once I'd got rid of my shock, I shouted really loudly, "Are you calling me a prostitute?"
Oh my God.
They're like, "Madam, please, we don't want any." And there are people coming in, guests coming in. I said, "How very dare you, sir?"
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh,
So
yes, you should have
just how
definitely.
rude. My God,
Yeah,
how
that's
rude.
horrible. I
And
am
it
so
wasn't a
sorry for that. I
yeah,
mean,
it wasn't a
yeah,
compliment. But yeah, so
no.
Monaco, did you ever go? Of course you did. You went to Slammers, you met Lisa, Slammers bar.
Yes, yes, yes. Stars and Bars. You talk about Stars and Bars. Yeah. Or it's the restaurant.
Slammers,
No.
the bar
Yeah,
where the bar.
there was one, I lived there, I moved to 2010. So Slammers was the little bar up in the corner
Yes,
at the Old Harbor. Yeah.
where Prince
Yeah, but
Albert
I think
goes.
she started Stars and Bars later on down
Yeah.
in
Stop.
yeah.
Yeah, so they call him the boss, don't they? Prince Albert. And I sat with him watching rugby one day. It's not, don't be impressed, guys. I'm just saying, it's just Europe. It's a lot more kind of
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
accessible.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I mean, like, just when we lived there, you get a lot of rumors, like people, like the stuff that never goes out, and the amount of suicides. It's very secret, everything.
yeah,
Yeah, I met Prince Albert also a couple of times. But yeah, that's another story.
yeah.
All that, but
Let's go
I've
back
had
to
visions about Monaco
mm,
when I believe there were many things that were, hidden.
yeah,
And
definitely. My friend
mhm.
quit the yachting industry because he was so horrified at how many young girls he saw being flown out to yachts, shipped out to yachts, and he knew that there was horrendous, horrific just bad, evil things happening, and he quit because he's that kind of man, and
Yeah,
he's
there are
really, really
some
sad.
rumors within some of the survivors that that's how they disappeared.
Yeah,
They were thrown overboard. And I
Jesus
don't know if
Christ.
that's true.
Yeah.
But it's definitely thinking about the little French, oh no, the German girl, Michelle, that disappeared. I
Mm,
wonder if she disappeared that way. I mean,
God. We just hope these things all come to the surface and the victims do
mm,
come through, which is why I said I'm so proud of you being on my channel, sharing, as much detail as we can. Let's go
yeah.
back to Paris. Where was the apartment? What did it look like? And you walk into the living room, and then where are all these little girls coming from? Are they in the
Yeah,
bedrooms? Like,
so right now I can't remember the name of the street, but they all live very close to each other, to Avenue Foch or Foch, Foch, I think you say in French, which is interesting.
mm,
It could be Avenue Foch, actually. I just want to say that. But they all live very close to each other. Whether I don't know whether Jean Marie knew Epstein. I don't know when he bought his apartment, but I was only there once. I just remember seeing the wooden door and walking in and thinking, wow, this is a beautiful apartment with the old windows, the French balconies, and beautiful interior, and that there were several rooms. And I was so shocked why he would have girls living with him that looked sick or drugged. And I felt like a mother to them. I wanted to take care of them, but they didn't. They were so like shy, not shy, held back. They didn't want to speak. And so, you know, yeah, so it's hard to say really. I don't even remember where Daniel lived, but I met some Swedish girls that I actually reconnected with that I met when I was there. And they remember, they're my witnesses actually, and they remember that we were in Daniel Siad's apartment and he didn't have any furniture. And I've totally erased this, I can't remember. And they said we were cooking pasta and sitting on the floor. And this girl remembers Daniel saying in his broken French or broken English, um, yes, you can be my assistant to this girl. You can keep an eye on ladies and find women for me. So she remembered that. And so,
Whoa.
I've been lucky that way that I have witnesses to, I've been trying to find the people that I met to support my story. So that was helpful. But like I don't know what happened to these girls. It's pretty clear to me that this pool shack had been used before. It was not a one-time thing. Somebody had been sleeping there many times. And when I gave my deposition in Paris, I always felt, and I've been telling my survivor sisters for years, like there's something more with this guy Daniel. But why are they not investigating him? Why is nobody knowing about his name and why can't we find him? So it wasn't until I found out his real name, I did the research, and I find out Daniel wasn't even his real name. His real name is Ammar Aitziad. And he was from Algeria. He was a Kabul Jew. He had a cousin, Richard, but that wasn't his real name either. They took French names because they had Arabic names.
Mm,
And maybe because he was Jewish, he wanted to have a Jewish name. I don't know. But his cousin wrote a book, and he was somewhat in Secret Service agent. And so I found that very interesting. Why did Daniel change his name so many times? And why was he, when I found out where he was living across, basically very close, 20 minutes away from where I grew up, at the Mexican embassy. Why was his address at the Mexican embassy in Stockholm? And so they denied it. They said they had a chef or cook with that name. But that's odd to me. It's odd to me that then the embassy, the new embassy of Mexico came in at the same time as the Algerian embassy to Stockholm. At the same time, it's also odd to me that the lady, the wife of the ambassador, the Mexican ambassador, has a massage school in Mexico. I thought that was odd. It's a coincidence, perhaps. But then when I looked into Daniel Siad's LinkedIn page, and I found the companies he was working for was very strange. Like he was working for the company US, saveus.com, and I looked at their website, and now they've changed the website. But in the beginning, they had images of these tunnels. They were creating escape tunnels from houses, um, safe windows, from explosions, and it's like safe houses. They create them.
mm.
Why did Daniel Siad work with that? What was his role in that?
God.
And I was so frustrated because I tried to push Sweden to launch an investigation into him. They didn't.
Hmm.
We know Ghislaine Maxwell traveled to Stockholm and she picked up girls at this hotel with Eva Duban. And I mean, there's so many things that they should have investigated in Sweden that they never did.
Mm. Well,
Uh,
we know that when investigations take place, no matter what country, there's always going to be cover-ups because they don't want to expose the elites, the ones who are running the police or the school boards or this has come out. This is something, unfortunately, those of us who are awake to the corruption on our planet en masse, these are things that we have to acknowledge because it's part of that life. Let's go back a bit to when you were given the ticket to get home to escape, which was so clever of you to do that. How soon after you get out of that apartment with these seemingly drugged young ladies that won't even look at you to getting on that plane?
well, so there was that day or the evening when I saw these girls, when we had the casting, that was just a few hours. I never went back to his apartment after that because I seemingly stayed with Daniel Siad, his apartment, which I don't even remember, which is so weird to me. So I'm not sure if I was drugged or I don't
Yeah.
know. I probably was in shock, I was in shock, so that's probably why. But as soon as I'm thinking I was there 10 days overall because I had 2 weeks vacation. So I had to come back within that time. So it was between 10 days to 12 days, I'm thinking, that I was gone. And I just remember coming back home to Stockholm and meeting my boyfriend. And, he was trying to be intimate to me, and I freaked out. And he's like, "What the heck is going on with you? Why?" Because I was probably shaking, and I didn't want him to touch me. And at the end of the day, I told him what had happened. So the rumor goes that, I don't know for sure, but when Daniel said came back to Sweden, that my boyfriend at the time punched him down and he had to go to hospital. I don't know. That was the rumor, and I can't. I should ask him because I haven't really asked him that. But I lived with fear because I thought they were going to come after me for the longest time to kill me because I never returned.
God, how awful and
Yeah.
terrifying. Um,
Mm.
Gerard Marie, who owned Elite, who shut the curtains. I mean, imagine all of the staff there knowing there's another victim. He's closing, he's doing his ritual. Let's see how
Yeah.
far he can get. You know, it's just so horrific that this was allowed. I know that
Mm.
like 20 odd years ago, it was about 20 years ago, right? Or was it longer?
It's 36 years ago.
Good Lord. Okay. Things
Mhm.
were
It's
so much
1990. Yeah.
right in the 90s. We were so loose and it was so acceptable for a man to go, nice boobs, or,
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah,
all
yeah.
whistle or,
Touching.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was never okay, but we weren't outspoken enough, us women, that we didn't change the rules. We've been changing the rules for a long time, but
Totally.
oh my
Yeah. And
God.
that's important to say because a lot of women, like my daughter and her generation and millennials, they don't understand this. They don't understand, why didn't you just punch him or run out? Because we didn't have that culture. As a Swede, being naked was something natural. So we were topless on the beach. That was normal. But we were respected. Our men respected us, and we were never touched or anything. It was just people were used to that. We were used to seeing our parents naked. It was not like England or, like we breastfed with, that's a different thing people don't understand. So we come with this natural energy and trust that men will not hurt us. And that's how I grew up. And I think that's why I went, even though I think I overruled my ego overruled. I wanted to be the next supermodel, obviously. So if I had had any sense of a warning sign, a red flag, I wasn't. The adventure seemed too interesting. I wanted to pursue that quest for luck or
Yeah.
dream.
And how beautiful. And it's so many girls. And it's such a lovely thing. If you think people are saying you're beautiful, you could do catwalk, you could do catalog, you could do whatever. It's exciting. You just
Yeah.
don't expect. And for anyone to criticize any woman or man, anyone who's gone through any kind of sexual harm, to say, oh, you should have known and it's your fault, because
Yeah.
people do that. And it's
Yeah.
so wicked because when it
Yeah.
happens to you, like you said, you flop, you fight,
Hmm.
or you fawn, you're begging for your life
Yeah.
almost. They're like the four, as we say in therapy. Bless your heart and bless those girls. I don't
Mm.
want to skip too far ahead because I want to get to the Victoria's Angels part, but how you got there. But I also want to ask you, Gerard Marie, was he very close with Jean-Luc Brunel, another groomer?
Yeah. So that's, in the beginning when I wrote my book, I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember the name. And I didn't think about it until we started Victoria's Angels and survivors from Jean-Luc Brunel got involved with us. So that's when I realized, there was some kind of connection. But now when the Epstein files have been released, we all knew that it's in the files. They did communicate. And it could have been the third person in Gerald's apartment. Because when I saw his picture the first time, I was like, he looks familiar. He looks familiar, but I don't know from where. They kind of look similar. Him and Claude Haddad, they all had this, they were short, they had this long hair. Um, so they were kind of similar looking to me.
Hmm.
And so,
That dirty,
yeah, I
rapey
was thinking
pedo
about
look.
doing like hypnosis or something to find out more what really happened and if it really was Jean-Luc, because that would really prove their connection.
Hmm.
you know. So, but they were definitely there are in the Epstein files many emails with them talking about each other because of Elite who was going to buy. Apparently, Epstein was interested in buying Elite when John Casablancas sold it, and there were so many different kinds of routes. Um, and so, yeah, that's why this investigation has been so important to really take, I was hoping that they would arrest Daniel in time before he was killed. I think he was killed anyway. I hope he wasn't. Of course, I hope it wasn't suicide. Maybe it was a cardiac arrest because he was so stressed out. But he was available to be heard. And why wasn't he arrested in time? It could have saved his life, perhaps. And so the only person left now is Gerald Marie. And so we just hope he's going to be questioned. But what happens if he dies? We're never going to have justice.
Well, I know we a lot of people watching this, they won't know some of the people that you're talking about. So we'll just be kind of mindful of that. That there is, ongoing. Well, it's like the Epstein files are out, but what's being done about them? But if you don't mind going back to like, because it's so interesting, like I say, this beautiful 20-year-old, you've now had this horrific situation, but you've managed to get home. You've told your boyfriend, hopefully he's beaten the shit out of this Daniel guy. And now, what do you do now? What happens in your life at that time?
Well, so at that time, I finally told him, I told him, and then I promised to never tell anybody else. I even wrote in my diary, I didn't want to talk about this week. It was horrific. And, but I noticed that I had become very hard. I can see on pictures, like the modeling pictures, I look completely different. There's a lost
Oh.
innocence and I have this
Mm.
hardness over me. So after years, I started my own company, and I met this Whitbread sailor who was a Whitbread sailor. He became my mentor, and he was very devoted to Osho and Osho's teachings. And he said, "You're so ungrounded. You need to work on yourself." So he took me to my first Osho meditation, and that's when I realized I needed to work on myself. So I went to this leadership training in Sweden, and there was this course called Meet Yourself, and that's when I did body psychotherapy for the first time, and I just released so much pain, and
Mm.
that's when I met my ex-husband. So for like 2 3 decades my journey was working on myself through psychotherapy, through meditation, through different healing modalities, and just really really trying my very best to heal myself, because I used to be so scared of this kind of men that were Arabic looking, that I used to go neighborhoods to avoid them, like not walking past their shops or people. I was so terrified about them because they would always, like whistle and call, and it was horrible. And years later, I started dancing ballroom, and when I was in my 40s, and that's when I realized that all these memories were stuck in my body and my cellular structure.
Mm.
It was so difficult for me to become sensual again. It was so threatening because I was so used to be a masculine, energy to protect myself.
Of course,
My
yeah.
husband never really protected me. I never had a man who protected me.
Mm.
And that's so sad. Like a lot of women, we don't have that strong masculine that respects women. It's all about what can you do for me.
Mm.
And so I learned through dancing thanks to this beautiful teacher I had from Russia, and and started to become sensual again. And that's really when I healed on a deeper level as well, and I started to be myself.
Oh, bless your heart. It's interesting too because ballroom is so stiff and stoic, and you really have to have that neck jolly stiff and tight. But movement in the body, it really does, that kind of somatic flow, it really
Yeah,
does.
especially the Latin dancing, because the
Oh, yeah.
Latin ballroom is you got to be
Beautiful.
sensual, and
Yeah.
you cannot fake it. I mean, at least I can't. I couldn't fake. You have to dance with your soul. So.
Mm-mm. I love that.
Mm.
So, what got you into creating Victoria's Angels?
Well, so, in 2020, when we started conversating, Carrie and Lisa and I, we were thinking, what do we do? Like, because it was just when journalists starting to talk about Epstein, and Trump and so on. So lots of journalists wanted to have to know if we knew anything about Epstein and so on. So after doing research, more and more victims came forward, and we decided we have to do something. We have to file a complaint against Gerald Marie because he was the one who raped so many women. He's never been arrested or heard, even though Lisa was undercover for BBC and they did this documentary that BBC was threatened to be sued if they would air it. So they basically shut down. Lisa's career was destroyed, and it all went quiet. And so, yeah, so we launched this group came together, and the name Victorious Angels was really a play on words with Lex Wexner and the Victoria's Secret, because we don't want to be victims. We want to be victorious, and we want to tell the world that we are victorious and we have
Oh,
angel protection. And so
oh, I
Archangel
love
Michael became
that.
our saint.
I never knew that. I don't think most people watching this know that. Because we look because it was so close to Victoria's Secrets that a lot of it I assumed it was part of that. But you did it to support the girls who've gone through the grooming and the rapes and the murders and the tortures and the porn videos and being drugged and all these terrible things that have happened. That is so honorable.
Yeah. So we are the survivors of Gerald Marie, Jean-Luc Brunel, and Danielle Siad. I mean, that's lately, but since then, many things have happened, and many organizations and Model Alliance and the U New York do amazing job also. And so we just have been trying to push this and talk to journalists, share we had the case open against Joel Marie until 2023. And just because we didn't have enough of victims within the statute of limitations, it was closed. And then Lisa appealed to the High Court, and she actually has appealed to the Human Rights Court now because what happened to her, that she was molested, as an undercover model when they did this BBC documentary. And so our goal is to try to change the law in Europe to abolish the statute of limitations, because most victims really don't
Mm,
come out until they're 20, 30 years later, and then it's too late.
mhm,
So we want to work for that. We talked in the Senate, in the French Senate, and in the European Parliament. We were invited there 2022 to speak about that and to change the laws. And the laws in Sweden are really good now. It's just the problem is that women are not believed, even though our laws are really helpful. The problem is we cannot always prove enough, and victims are not always believed. So,
mhm.
yeah,
Gosh.
yeah,
So, wow, that's just so much. And I mean, well done again. Like I'm saying, you're just such a leader for other women and men who've gone through horrors like this, and to be so brave. But it's like the energy finds itself. So all the survivors have been finding themselves and looking at others and feeling safe to then stand alongside and speak out. So over this time, of the kind of revelations in the Epstein files, what are your thoughts on what's happened and how many arrests have been made and how many trials have been happening? Like, what are your thoughts?
yeah. I mean, yeah, that I think we really need to just keep pushing um, disclosure. And I think a lot of people in the US are disappointed with Trump, that one of his promises was to help survivors and to release the Epstein files. And that was the reason why many supported him. And that has not happened. It's on the opposite. So to me, that's just a proof that he's just a puppet like all of them. They're the same same puppets. And whether Danielle also was a Mossad agent or some kind of agent, we shall never know now because he's dead, unless other people start talking and we find other proof. So I think, um, yeah, we just have to keep pushing the governments in France to do their job to do a thorough investigation into the death of Daniel and also into all these people that were involved, Epstein's accomplices. And it's just appalling, I think, because they have two prosecutors or two investigators that are doing this job. And how many victims have come forward now? It's at least 20, around 20 when it comes to se-ual. And we know we're at least 20, 25, 30. I don't know how many we are now when Gerard Marie and Jean-Luc Brunel.
Mm-mm,
So why are they not putting in more resources?
mhm.
It's hard to understand for me. And why is Macron saying that this is not a French affair when we know that Paris was a hub for human trafficking
My God.
and that's also makes you think, what are they covering up here?
Absolutely. Gosh, well, I mean, there's just so many ways to go in this conversation with you, and I really want to do the best to support you and your testimony and to make sure that we don't kind of miss or skip any corners. Jean-Luc Brunel was a very, very big figure in the modeling world. He was a cocky bastard. He was very full of himself. And I say that with the utmost disrespect because all the things that have come out of how many terrible crimes he committed as a serial rapist. And so he'll be remembered for that. And that's the point to make. These beasts that have done what they've done will be remembered for their crimes, like Fauci and Soros and Bill friggin' Gates and horrible evil monsters like them.
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
and Bill Gates is in the files too. We have to be very
Hmm.
careful because my friend Sean Atwood is in the have you been on his channel?
No, actually, I was supposed to be there this week, well, last week, but then it was canceled.
That'll
It was
be
postponed.
great. I love
Yeah,
Sean. But Sean's
yeah,
in the
me
files
too.
because he knocked on the door where Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, we always called him Randy Andy. That was his nickname in England, because he liked the girls, apparently. Sean Atwood took a camera he wanted to film the white staircase that's in that famous photograph of Andrew with his arm around the beautiful Virginia Dufresne.
Hmm.
And so that's the only reason he's in there. So there are names in there that have
Yeah,
nothing nefarious. And so it's devastating to people because there'll be accusations. Oh, you were in the files. It's like me
yeah,
knowing somebody very, very famous's partner. So I knew the partner of
yeah,
somebody, one of the most famous women in the world. And according to them now, I'm a satanic pedophile myself. I mean, that was a few years ago by some idiots. That's my point.
yeah,
It ruins lives. It ruins your
yes,
life. So
yeah.
Jean-Luc Brunel was found dead, right? Good. But it's
Yes, he
sad that,
committed suicide, and that's why our
did
last hope
he?
is Gerard Marie, because he was a serial rapist and he has never been convicted. And so our hope is that they call him in as soon as possible before he has a heart attack, because he's the only one who can give witness now. And so this is why this is so crucial that they take this seriously,
Mhm.
because Jean-Luc, in his, when he was, from what I understand, he was collecting evidence when he was supposed to go to court. Where's all that evidence? Who
But
has that
he
evidence?
was going to give names and defend himself, do you mean?
Yeah, 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 of
Jean-Luc
course.
Brunel was going to give evidence on the other
Yes,
perpetrators.
of
Okay.
course. Yes.
And so
Yeah.
do we really think he killed himself or do we think he was
No,
popped
I mean,
off?
it was no. I think we're all, especially the survivors of him, they would never say that. He would never commit suicide. And the same with Epstein. He would never commit suicide. No, those were not the kind of men to do that.
And the guy, the David, the Arab guy,
Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel,
Daniel, yeah. Mm.
he died recently. I saw your just very recently, and I felt so bad for
Mm.
you because you were so upset.
Yeah.
So tell us how
Yeah,
he died.
he died in his apartment of a heart attack. He was found by a lady who lived with him, a younger lady, and the his lawyer said that he was in good shape, he was healthy, and so says the people around him, his friends or acquaintances, all said that he was healthy. So when I heard, I was actually in Heathrow when I found out because I was flying from Sweden to the US. and my phone blows up with all these messages. Where are you? Where are you? Like, are you alive? And
Mm.
um, and that's when I realized that he was killed, and I immediately felt like he's been taken out.
And
He's been murdered.
what are the details of his death?
Well, they are doing a abduction, but I haven't seen the abduction yet, so I don't know yet.
Abduction? Do you mean
Oh,
autopsy?
not abduction, sorry. Autopsy. Sorry, not
That's all
abduction.
right.
Autopsy.
Yeah, yeah.
Apologize. Yeah, autopsy of his health and how he was. But I intuitively feel that he was killed by somebody who don't want him to speak, and that's because all of us survivors have been telling, well, not all, but a few of us have been sharing that to police that we think it's a danger for his life and we want him to be arrested as soon as possible. And that's when we were told that he was going to be arrested, you know, already in April. I filed in February, and then we heard it was going to be in May and then in June because more and more witnesses came forward
Mm,
sharing. So, but they should have done it after at least a, after a couple of complaints. They should have done it,
mm, mm.
and they didn't. And that's so sad to me.
And it's so wrong and it's unjust in and of itself. But again, so
And
many
that's why I'm,
victims don't
yeah,
ever
and
get
that's why
heard.
I'm filing a civil lawsuit against the French state now, because that's the only thing we have left
Hmm.
to see some kind of justice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Unless we have some other victims coming forward that are within the statute of limitations, and then we can have Gerald Marie arrested.
Mm-mm. So he must be right up there in age, the old duffer, right? He's got to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like
he's in his
pushing 80.
70s.
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, yeah, probably he's at least, I would say, 20 years older than I am. So yeah, so he must be, well, 76, 75.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's always incredible to me that these old men, of which there are countless, you know, 'cause they've got a couple of quid in their wallet and they think that that gives them access to all the pretty girls. And if they only knew how stupid they look, how ridiculous they are, to imagine that a lot of women are just using them because they can, you know?
yeah,
And they really believe, like you hear all these stripper stories, all these lovely girls that have to make their money, however, and they lap dancing to get extra money and for their, you know, single mothers, a lot of them. And
yeah,
the men start to fall in love with them, but the girls are there just to take their money. That's the whole thing. And that's
mhm,
sad too. There's a lot of sad emotions
yeah.
that get swept up and caught up. And it,
Yeah, I've been thinking, as a healer myself and a coach to people and guide, I always think about what is this anger that resides in a lot of men. I think it has to do with traditions, culture, and religion. A lot of these men were circumcised, and how do we know that that wasn't a huge wounding in their soul? It's their private parts, it's their holy parts, and the first thing that they experience is the betrayal of a mother giving their child away to be circumcised.
mm,
And I always thought that that scar, because in Sweden we don't circumcise babies, but here in the States, pretty much everyone. And I have a son, and when he was 14 and he realized he wasn't circumcised, and he's like, "Mom, I want to get circumcised like my friends." I'm like, "No way. You need to talk to your dad because that's not a Viking thing," I said to him. And
yes.
so and so he's so grateful and happy now that he's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's it. That's one thing. And I think it's just the culture of the patriarchal society, how men have been programmed to become brutes and to the only way to have control of a woman is to empower them, not to respect them and not to be equal to us. And of course, there are beautiful men out there, and I have, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of male role models just yet. My son, I asked him, "Who's your male role model?" And I wish he could have said his dad, but he said, "I don't know. I think it's myself. I have to
Oh.
become a role model." And it's so tragic.
Mm, mm, mm. Well,
So,
divine masculine has been so gotten after. There are so many men who are, I don't want to get off track about why you're here with me today, but in kindness and support to the beautiful men. And there are so many beautiful men. I'd like to find me a nice, beautiful man.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, so there is a lack of role models in certain aspects because they've been demasculinized, they feel weak, they're frightened to get the door, pull the chair out, get my door, pull my chair out, that kind
Mm,
of thing. And or stand up when you come in the room, or stand up when you come to sit down, or all these lovely things. It's just so respectful and it's endearing and it helps to kind of grow energy between people, and it's
mm,
lovely.
yeah,
And
definitely.
because women have fought so hard to have their own money, run their own companies, be that independent, which there's nothing wrong with that. I admire that. I've been that way my whole life. It's just a clash of confusions in some people's minds. It doesn't need to be. And anybody that wants to live the traditional way, lovely. I was
Mhm.
studying Hinduism. It's not for me. I do love aspects of that religion, but it's all about the mum stays at home. But there's part of me that's like, listen, if you've got children and you can be at home with them, is that not the best place to be for you? But doesn't mean you have to lose yourself completely. Like you must need a lot. People need a lot of support. But that's a really big subject. We probably shouldn't go there today.
Yeah,
But
next
just
time.
yeah, next time, next time.
Mhm.
So you mentioned something about when you came out of the Paris apartment with all these other young ladies and little girls in there that you felt were kind of drugged, and then you kind of go and stay with Daniel, but you kind of wake up not really remembering anything. And I could see you literally searching your brain files, that even in this moment, even though you've told the
Yes.
story so many times, and this is a classic symptom of when the brain is protecting because trauma erases memory. The brain is always going to try and cover up. People go, I don't remember my childhood at all. Doesn't mean every childhood was traumatic, but there's reasons why. You have a car accident, you wake up in hospital. Why? You got no memory because the brain will try to protect you every time. And it's
Yeah.
very likely that you are missing pieces. And it sounds like there was well, we know they used to drug people all the time. There's a drug women
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the time.
absolutely. And you're so right. Because I remember reading Kathy O'Brien's book because I actually wrote her and she was so kind to sign her book for me. And
Uh,
also reading Virginia's book, Goffrey's book. I
mm,
so connected to that and remembered, and it made so much sense that why don't I remember my childhood as well? What's going on? And so, there could have been abuse happening earlier on that I'm not aware of. Who knows? And maybe that's why I was so susceptible to being groomed again. I always wondered if that could have been the case, but it's definitely was happening in my family because when I wrote my book, my dad told me, "Thank you for writing about this story. Now I feel I can tell my story." And he told me he was raped when he was 17. And that was such a healing thing for my father to admit, and I couldn't believe it. And it was like, wow, this is generational. And I cannot tell you how many times people have come up to me and say, I was also raped, especially men, and sharing that so taboo to share something like that. And
God,
so, yeah,
bless your dad. Bless your
so I,
dad.
yeah,
Gosh,
so I feel like as we feel more safe, we are allowing ourselves to bring forward those memories. And that's I can tell you, first time I did my interview in French, I was so triggered, I froze.
mm,
And everything I was going to tell, it was just like I was there in the moment of being raped again
oh,
because I hadn't spoken French and spoken about those things until that day. And I'll never forget that, how difficult that was. So after that, I'm like, I'm speaking English
bless you,
because it was
bless
easier
you.
for me.
Oh, I'm so
Mm,
sorry. Did you ever
mm.
meet Ghislaine Maxwell? And did you ever be around Epstein?
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't have remembered. I don't think they were mentioned. It was 1990. I don't know how much time they would have spent in Paris when I was there. I'm curious though to know the villa. Who did the villa belong to that I came to? Because that was in the region. We know he spent a lot of time in Saint-Tropez, in the region, the Côte d'Azur, like the Mediterranean, in Nice, in Saint-Tropez, Monaco, in that region. So I really want to find out who that villa belonged to. So anybody listening to this can help me. That would be amazing. Um, because that could prove a lot. You know, we're many survivors who were taken to Saint Tropez and lived with people there. So and those people need to be heard too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from Monaco or Monte Carlo, as some people call it, to get on a bus down the road, a beautifully a euro to go all the way into Saint-Tropez. I mean, it's just amazing that bus system there from Monaco.
Yeah, and
So
there used to
down
be a
Cannes,
train
Saint-Tropez.
also.
Huh?
Yeah, there used to be a train also, so it was very convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a rich billionaire playground that and beautiful
Totally.
and I mean
Mhm.
among other things, but it's noted. It's
Yeah,
noted for that.
and they spend a lot of time there, you know, at the Cannes Film Festival, Woody Allen and Robert De Niro. And so there are many, many other things regarding that that we can talk about, you know, like people who he was involved with. Um, David Hamilton, the photographer who also raped children, who also com committed suicide, you know, and so yeah, there's a lot that needs to be investigated in that region as well.
Oh my
Mm,
goodness.
mm,
Just it's just so awful, isn't it?
yeah.
And just the vilest of the vile of humanity, the lowest of the low. And they think
Mm,
they're so cocky and they're so cool and they can get this and that. I remember watching a documentary a while ago of a beautiful group of stunning young girls, like 17, 18, 19, just little girls, just, and they all want to be models. And if they've done the same thing, they've gone through an agency, they've been promised a job in Dubai. And so they get on this plane all together and they arrive at this place and they're all given a drink and they're told to drink it. It'd be rude not to drink it. And one girl didn't drink it. I don't know, she somehow sipped a bit and didn't consume the whole thing and started to watch every single other girl in the room pass out without exception. And then she
well,
laid down and she was watching these Arab men in their full dress, fiddling and touching, putting their hands, grabbing their boobs, laughing. And it went on for about 20 minutes while this drug took hold. And then the girls started to come round, and the men were like, "You were just jet lagged. You're fine." You know, it's just
oh,
like
that's horrible.
it's just so despicable that
Yeah, yeah.
the level of lack of soul, the level of lack of humanity, and they
Mhm,
think that I mean it's just beyond. But we do have to put these stories on the
mhm,
table. We have to. The names get
mhm,
named when there's 100% proof, so you don't destroy people's lives, of course.
mhm.
But
Yeah,
really,
totally, totally.
you're doing the work of, for that criminal justice should be doing because you
Yeah,
and the other survivor sisters, for example, have got
yeah,
more balls than any judge, jury, because what the Epstein files came out.
yeah.
What
And
the
I can just,
hell?
I know, and it's been like since I filed my complaint, or actually this whole year, I had to let go of my own work as a healer and a and teacher a lot because to just involve myself in the case of Siad and helping the new survivors coming forward and you know the opportunity because as I was trafficked to João Marie, we have all the survivors of João Marie. So my case is so important. That's why I was hoping that they would bring him to justice as well. So if people are interested in helping us, we do have a GoFundMe page that can really help because I've been living on my savings for a while now, and I'm a single mom, and it's been really, really difficult for me. So,
Mm, bless your heart. Well, tell us about it. What's the name? I'll put it underneath
oh
this
yeah,
video,
so
but
it's
let's share.
so if people go to we're actually redoing the website, but you can go to www.victoriousangels.com and there's a GoFundMe page there. It's a little donation button. It's considered a gift, so that gift will be honored as at least covering some of our costs that we have of maintaining the business and um, helping us to have cover lawyer costs and other things traveling so that can really help us to do that. I would really like to go to Paris for a press conference in September. So if anybody would like to help us with that, that's would be amazing.
That's
Thank you.
wonderful. And thank you and the other ladies, sister survivors, as you call them. I think that's so beautiful. It's so tragic, but so beautiful that you've all found each other and you're standing strong and you're, taking down this corrupt system in the way that you can. I really hope that I haven't forgotten to ask you anything at this stage that's really important. I do honor the fact that you are so incredibly healed in so many ways. You've obviously done so much work on yourself to the point that you take clients, you help people. Would you like to tell us about your work in that
Yeah,
regard?
so I have a company called True Star Coaching, which is really about came about that the work of finding your higher self, connecting to your higher self, which is I call the true star within, is ultimately aligning body, mind, and soul, and living from an aligned life, healed life. My goal is to make people masters of life, to become sovereign human beings, so we can live in our mission and purpose and with our values, to create a better world. That's really all that I live for, and it's all my mission. It's always been. And people can go to www.truestarcoaching.com and they can read more about that. I do sacred journeys to Egypt and France. I have a little store, so if they want to support that, get my book from the store, they can do that. It's the truestarshop.com. So that will be very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Of course,
Mm.
that's so lovely. And, we want to help get you those funds so you can be part of the press conference in Paris because it's just so important. So I do urge anyone, please forward, forward yourself, step forward, just do something if possible to help Ebba continue her work in this great reveal of horror that we are taking down. Your book, buying Ebba's book. Let's just talk 2 seconds on your book, or 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, as long as you need.
Yeah. So I did have I started meditating when I was 15, so I've always been very spiritual. But then 2012, I really had my inner voice, and it said, you have to set the 10th alignment. And I had no idea what it meant. And so I did research, and that's when I truly understood the connection of the higher self. What is the higher self, our soul? That I have been living a life that was so pleasing everybody else and living a truth that was, I lived in the shadows of professional golfer for 23 years. And so I put myself aside. And so with that came this book, and it arose from this yearning of connecting to source, connecting to prime creator, to the Holy Spirit and divine feminine. And so there were all these signs that just happened, and then eventually that became the book. So the book is my spiritual memoir. And it has questions to the readers so that they can follow along and remind themselves of who they truly are and connect to that source spirit that we are here to be fully an embodied divine on earth.
I
So,
love it. It's so beautiful. I just feel so proud of you for doing such work on yourself and being in a place to hold space because some people aren't and they shouldn't be trying to help other survivors because they still haven't worked on themselves. And I have so much compassion for them. But it's clear that you have that peaceful, angelic kind of vibration that is, and you've got a long time proven in this work. You do have a really beautiful, special connection to Mary Magdalene. We were discussing that earlier. I think we should spend a little bit sharing that because it's very, very appealing to those who are drawn to the Magdalene energies.
yeah. So when this started, I didn't know anything about Mary Magdalene, and it was 2016. I had this man visiting he calls himself the Rainbow Warrior, and he works with huge Vogel crystal. Marcel Vogel was a guy who worked with IBM or for IBM, and he was part of creating the plasma screens, and he studied quartz crystal, and he had visions, so he started cutting them in certain uh, ways so they would harmonize greater frequencies. And so I was just called. So I went to this store in Asheville and bought these two crystals. No idea. They were hugely expensive. One was $6,000. And I'm like, my husband was furious at me, but I
Oh,
had to have these crystals. And one was 144 sided crystal. this tall, and the other one was 13-sided hand cut crystal, this big. And so I didn't know how to work with these crystals. I just felt like there was something ancient within me that had worked with them before. So I go about and ask a guy called Andrew Bartzis, the galactic historian, and he says you have to ask them their names. So I asked the 13-sided crystal what her name was, and she said it's Magdalena. And then I'm like, okay, that's my cousin. What does that mean? I have no idea. So I told a friend of mine who said, oh my God, that's the divine feminine number 13, and that's Mary Magdalene. And I'm like, okay, who is that? I didn't know. So then I learned all about Mary Magdalene, and this crystal is very connected to her. And then I knew that actually there was in my ancestry, my family name on my mother's side was Bonnell, and there was a Cathar family, most likely from the south of France, and their emblem was the tower, and the tower was always the protection of the Magdalene lineage. So there was a historic DNA also from that. So that's why I was always drawn to the Cathar or philosophy in south of France and the people.
Mm.
And yeah, so I do trips to south of France. I've been doing that a few times, more for people to connect to their own divine feminine within through the energy of the space.
I love
Mm.
that. We'll put all of those details. And again, just sharing the fact that, you're able to go back and be in the south of France where a lot of this pain and hurt. I know Paris is what, 200 miles away from, let's say, Cannes?
That's, yeah, I've had many weird things happening when I was in Paris. Many, many things always happen, and always in September of some reason, where I feel like I have been there many lifetimes to work with this energy and to disclose this energy. And I think that's partly why I had to learn French when I was younger, why I lived in Monaco for so many years, and why I've always felt this calling to come back to Paris.
Mm,
Paris was the light, it was the city of lights, but it was the city created for Isis, the divine feminine, Parisis for Isis. And that was the original, Sacré-Cœur was the mount where they were devoted to Isis and the divine feminine. So it has a lot of that energy. So, and I always thought that they have to take her hostage, and now it's time for her to break free.
absolutely. And again, not to offend any Christians or Catholics, but there is a story, a much believed story, that after the murder of Jesus Christ, Mary Magdalene, who was his partner in life, his physical wife partner in life, was pregnant and escaped to France and had her daughter Sarah. There are scrolls, there are documents, and I know it's horrifying for a very religious person to imagine that their Jesus was a real man having a physical relationship with Mary Magdalene, who it was said was the most powerful disciple out of all of them. And there was much jealousy amongst the other men, hence the Da Vinci's Last Supper, where they're all doing not like that means F off in England. I don't know what it means. Peace in America. It means F
Yes.
off in England.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to kind of take away or decode that Da Vinci Last Supper in particular.
Yeah, and people should read The Holy Grail, Bloody Grail. That was an amazing book written in the 90s or late 80s even. And a lot of truth in that book that, the movie was copied, basically. He
The Da Vinci Code.
copied. Yeah, Dan Brown copied a lot of their
And it was a
information.
load of rubbish. I was so mad when I went to see
Yeah.
that film.
Uh-huh.
I was like, just take it off now, turn it off. I felt the
Yeah.
same when I went to see Eat, Love and Pray. Julia Roberts
Yeah.
in that role? No, love, not you. The hot guy, Olivier Bardem? Yes, my love, you stay right there.
Oh,
But
yes.
yeah, it's just like the book to the movie, and it happens
Yeah.
a lot. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
we digress. So it's been lovely sitting with you in your beautiful energy. It's so peaceful. I know that that actually transmits out there. Just want to send so much healing to everybody, anybody, and love and support to anyone who's gone through any kind of physical trauma or emotional trauma. Everyone does, but this
Mm.
particular subject of so many young girls still being, peddled through Monaco and Cannes and Costa Rica now, and I mean everywhere. It's everywhere. Just,
Yeah,
there's that saying. It's like if you see something, say something. Say
yeah.
something. I was with my friend
I would
Marichka.
really like for people to pray for the victims or survivors who still are living in fear
Mm,
because there's still fear for their own life. And that's why they are anonymous. They don't want to speak up.
yeah.
And and so pray for them that they are protected. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
I was with my friend Marishka. We were putting up posters for my event in Brighton the other day, and we went into a restaurant to get some food, and there was a young girl with a much older man. And my friend just had the impulse to check, and everything was fine. It was fine. And my friend's one of those really like, she's a mum, she's got little children. She's like, she followed, like, kind of got involved in where they were going to the bathroom, and that's good. That's like, yes, do that. Step forward, make sure that child is safe, or that young girl, or that young boy, or that young woman, or that young man. I mean, there's a that keep it safe, the signal, the universal signal. If you're captured or if you need help, you make that signal. Every child should know that, but it is important. It really, really is. Well, I could just keep going with you.
Yes,
Um, Thank
so
you
much.
so much, Ebba, for
Thank
your
you so much.
time and
Thank you so much for having me.
of course, my love, and your testimony, and sending so much love to you, as I am to the beautiful audience, sending so much love from my heart to yours. And we'll see you soon. Much love.